In a small town cradled by gentle hills and dense woodland, there lived a young woman named Emma. She was the kind of person who preferred the company of novels to crowds, finding comfort in quiet corners and familiar pages. For years, solitude had been her closest companion, until the afternoon everything changed. It was one of those perfect spring days when the air smells like possibility. Emma had wandered down to the community park, a place she'd visited countless times before. That's when she noticed him, a group of teenagers playing an impromptu game of basketball, and among them, a boy named Marcus. He had an easy confidence about him, dark curly hair that caught the sunlight and a laugh that seemed to carry across the entire park. Their eyes met for just a moment, but it was enough. Emma felt something shift inside her chest, a flutter of nervousness mixed with curiosity. Embarrassed by her own reaction, she quickly turned away and headed home. But that brief encounter stayed with her, replaying in her mind as she tried to sleep that night. The following day, Emma found herself drawn back to the same spot. Part of her hoped he'd be there again, and part of her was terrified that he would be. Sure enough, Marcus appeared with his friends, their voices echoing with easy camaraderie. This time, Emma didn't let fear win. Taking a deep breath, she walked over. "Hi," she managed, her voice quieter than she'd intended. Marcus turned and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Hey, I'm Marcus." That single conversation sparked something neither of them expected. They began meeting regularly, sometimes by the lake, sometimes at the small cafe downtown, sometimes just walking through the neighborhoods as the sun set. Emma discovered that talking to Marcus felt effortless. He listened with his whole attention, asked thoughtful questions, and shared his own dreams without hesitation. He wanted to write, to tell stories that mattered. She'd never met anyone quite like him. Weeks melted into months, and Emma realized she was falling. She loved how he saw the world, with wonder and optimism. She loved how safe she felt sharing parts of herself she'd kept hidden. But doubt crept in too. Marcus was magnetic, surrounded by people who gravitated toward his warmth. Emma wondered how someone like him could possibly feel the same way about someone like her, someone who preferred shadows to spotlights. Yet the connection between them was undeniable. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, Emma decided to take the biggest risk of her life. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something. I think I've fallen in love with you." The silence that followed felt eternal. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she waited, already bracing for disappointment. Then Marcus reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Emma," he said softly, "I've been hoping you felt the same way." "Because I'm in love with you too." Relief and joy washed over her in equal measure. Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, filled with all the promise of new love under a painted sky. For a beautiful stretch of time, everything felt perfect. They explored hidden trails, shared late-night conversations about everything and nothing, and built a world that belonged only to them. Emma had never been happier, but life has a way of interrupting even the most beautiful stories. Near the end of summer, Marcus came to her with devastating news. His family was relocating. They'd be moving several hours away, too far for casual visits. Emma felt her heart crack at the news, but Marcus held her close and made a promise. "This isn't the end," he whispered. "Distance doesn't change how I feel about you." They spent their remaining days together, savoring every moment. Long walks where they memorized each other's faces, quiet afternoons where words weren't necessary, and tearful goodbyes that neither wanted to say. The day Marcus left, Emma stood on the sidewalk watching his car disappear into the distance. The emptiness that followed was overwhelming. For weeks she moved through her days like a ghost, trying to adjust to a world that no longer included him. But slowly, gradually, the sharp pain softened into something more bearable. Emma carried their memories like treasures, and though they stayed in touch through messages and occasional calls, life pulled them in different directions. Years passed. Emma finished school, started her career, and built a life she was proud of. But she never forgot Marcus or the way he'd changed her. Then, nearly a decade later, Emma was browsing in her favorite bookstore when a title caught her attention. She pulled the book from the shelf and froze. The author's name was Marcus, the same Marcus who'd once promised to write stories that mattered. Her hands trembled as she opened the book, and there, on the dedication page, were words that made her heart skip. For the girl who taught me what love means. Emma bought the book and read it cover to cover that night. Within its pages she found echoes of their story, transformed and fictionalized, but unmistakably theirs. The characters, the emotions, the small moments they'd shared, all woven into something beautiful. The next morning, Emma did something she'd been too afraid to do for years. She found Marcus's contact information through his publisher's website and sent a simple message. "I read your book. I never forgot you either," his reply came within hours. "Coffee? I think we have a lot to catch up on." 3 days later, Emma walked into a cafe in the city where Marcus now lived. When their eyes met across the room, it was like being transported back to that spring afternoon in the park. The same flutter, the same recognition, the same spark that time hadn't diminished. They talked for hours, catching up on lost years, sharing stories of who they'd become. And somewhere between the laughter and the comfortable silences, they both realized something remarkable. The love they'd thought they'd lost had simply been waiting for the right moment to find its way back. Some promises, it turns out, are meant to be kept, even if it takes a lifetime to fulfill them.